So I posted about this a lot. In the spring of 2020, again, when the Great Spirit made contact with me, the focus was really on um, reorganizing school systems to be supportive of human beings instead of whatever they're designed for now. And that's something that I've always been really passionate about, and that I've always sort of spoken of. And I've always believed the key to the issues that we have, specifically here in this country. I don't know if it's a worldwide issue, but I do know here that drugs are a huge problem, and that they kill a lot of people, and that addiction is a huge problem. And I always believed that the key to solving that problem was through teaching children early what a lot of other cultures do. Which is meditation and connection, and something bigger than themselves, and giving them a sense of unity beyond what's just within themselves, but within the universe. And I always believed that if there could be a retreat center set up where we taught people breath work and meditation and yoga and shamanic meditation, which for me, when I say that, means that I would put on a 20-minute or a 30-minute or a 10-minute drum soundtrack, and I would count myself down into hypnosis, and I would just visualize things during that time period. You know, if I had a question and I wanted to visit my ancestors, I would ask my ancestors before the journey, and that would be my intention. And then I would go, and what came up would be the answer, and it would help guide me. And again, I've always had a sense of belonging through nature and the stars, and knowing that everything above me was my family. The stars are my family, they're my ancestors, they're my family, and they're watching over me, because I've been pretty alone in my lifetime. And I always assumed that the reason I never struggled with addiction was because of that, because I had that great foundation. And something that I think is really important for our youth to know is that they're capable of these things within themselves, because I'm assuming most people use drugs as an escape. And if we taught kids ways to manage themselves, and give them emotional support sooner, then we would have, I thought, a less problem with these things. But now that I'm getting older, I'm realizing too that maybe that's not the only solution, because I guess people with addiction, it's something in their brain, they're saying now. And so now I feel like maybe I'm not the best person to talk about it, because I've never been addicted to anything except chocolate, or maybe cake, food, basically. And everything else, you know, even coffee. I would love to have coffee every day, but now I use it alternately every day, every other day, because it's part of my neurogenic bowel program for my incomplete spinal cord injury caused by blunt force trauma. So I have to be really conscious of that. Would I love coffee every day? Yes, but I limit it because I'm using it as a part of my health. And again, I've always attributed my ability to not be addicted to substances to the fact that I had this very rich, whole spiritual life and understanding of a consciousness that's much larger than just this tiny planet, which is a tiny molecule in our galaxy, which is a tiny molecule, which is part of the giant, vast universe, which needs equal light and dark to keep everything together. So again, I always assumed that if we taught these things to children, that we would have less of an issue with addiction. But now, again, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe somebody who has an addiction problem could attest to it, whether it works or not. One thing I can say to youth for sure is that if you can choose to develop a spiritual life, do that instead of dabbling in something that you're trying to escape in, because the rewards will be so much greater for you. I'm very fortunate that I very young developed a consistent practice with meditation and with breath work and with movement, and that I've always been really connected to nature, and I've always outletted my emotions through dance and through singing and through running and through being in nature and through connection with all things. And I didn't need any sort of escape through something else. And while I did experiment when I was very young, because I always had friends that were a lot older than me, and it didn't occur to me that they had an addiction problem, because I was just experimenting as a young person. And I just want to say there are many, many things that I have never tried and never wanted to try. So that's really important as well for people to know. And that's attributed to the fact that when I was young, people put things in my drink and then did things to me where I didn't have control over my body. So there's a big part of me that would never want to take a substance that makes me lose control of my body, because again, when you've had that happen to you as a young person, it's really scary, and it will shape you and it will change your mind. So I've never understood the people that desired that sort of escape. And not to mention the fact that all I need to do is sit back and close my eyes, and I can meditate, and I can be in these beautiful spaces and places, and I can connect with consciousness and beings in all spaces and places, beyond space and time, knowing no space and time, astral traveling, cosmic consciousness, other beings and places and spaces. And this might be too far-fetched for some people to understand here on this planet Earth, which is a tiny molecule that makes up the galaxy, that is a tiny molecule that makes up this universe. But, you know, I remember in 2017, I made the intention to travel to Sirius in meditation, the star. And I did, and I was welcomed by this beautiful procession in my meditation. It was about half an hour long, and as soon as I arrived, they led me upstairs and they crowned me, and there was this beautiful procession of love and outpouring of connection and family. And that was just in a meditation. I was under the influence of no substance. I just closed my eyes with intention, and that's what happened. Now, no matter what your spiritual practice brings you, whether it brings you visualization or not, it doesn't matter. The idea is that you're connecting with yourself, and that you're reminding yourself that there is unity and harmony within you, so you don't need to seek it outside of yourself. Now, there are indigenous peoples and indigenous healing practices that are very, very necessary for our society, and that we do need to be part of our conscious human beings. But I'm speaking about the huge problem that is here, especially in this country, with people that have an addiction problem. And again, I realize now I can't understand what that's like, because I cannot eat chocolate for days at a time, and to me, that would be the hardest thing to do. When I fasted during Ramadan, I proved to myself that I could have food and not eat it, because in the past when I've not eaten, it's been because I didn't have food or I didn't have money for food. This was something that I did consciously as a choice, and I proved to myself that even if I made something yummy, it could sit there and I could not eat it or drink anything the entire day from sunrise to sunset. Not even when I showered did I let a drop of water touch my mouth. So I proved to myself that even with my addiction, which is food, that I could withstand that and that I could overcome it and be stronger than it, because it wasn't because I didn't have food to eat. It was because I was choosing not to. So I was really proud of myself for that. But I also realize now that I might not understand what it's like for people who have an addiction to a drug. Because you could put every single substance in my apartment and leave me alone for weeks, and I wouldn't touch any of it. Again, for me, the hardest thing is chocolate. If I have chocolate and I don't eat the chocolate, that's me using my willpower. So it's hard for me, because part of me really does believe that something that I thought in the beginning is true. Like, I wonder what that would do if in school systems, again, in other places in the world, they do this. And maybe we could have a conversation and say, do you have the drug problems in your country that are here? Do you have the addiction problems that we have here? And if not, what did you do to make sure that that didn't occur? Plant medicines always have a place in our society, but they need to be understood and not repressed and not outlawed and not limited. Unfortunately, as we all know, this country is governed by what I call big pharma mafia. And that's people who know that what they have is poison, and they're standing behind it anyway because of money. and lack of consciousness. A lot of my family members have been addicted to these substances. I was fortunate that I don't have the same addiction problem that others do. Again, for me, it's the chocolate. Nothing else. So I just feel like this needs to be a conversation to occur, because every one of us knows what it's like to lose people because of an addiction. And every one of us knows how that feels. And one thing that I don't know is how it feels for those people that are struggling. I don't know what that's like. And so I don't always have the appropriate, I guess, understanding. Because to me, if I cannot eat the chocolate, I feel like anybody should be able to not do something. But I do wonder if we implemented these practices into schools, starting when kids were young, because we have a system that's designed to be with kids from the time they're very young. We could teach them culture and religions and languages and community and connection and mindfulness practices, and not the mindfulness that we see now, which is pseudo-spiritual. Breathe. Because we're meant to have all emotions. We're human beings. And until we have a perfect world and society, we can't be one way. Everybody knows that we have equal light and dark within us. It is normal for us to get angry, for us to get sad, for us to be scared, for us to be peaceful, for us to be happy, and then to let that flow and move forward with our emotions. If we were all sage, then we wouldn't be on this planet. We would be up there. But I wonder what would happen if in schools we implemented these practices. And instead of putting kids on medications that are harmful over time, as it's been proven, as we know, we taught them instead breathwork practices. Instead of giving kid braces, we taught them about breathwork practices in ways that they can hold their jaw, which would actually prevent a lot of the complications that they have to begin with. That's been practiced, studied, and proven to be effective. If instead of chemical compounds that cause a person to need 100 other chemical compounds, instead we used plant medicines to rehabilitate our body and get us to a place in space where we were fully healed once again. These are all things that should be happening and occurring, and should be a conversation that are being had. Because repression of this knowledge and repression of these medicines and repression of this only means that society is not doing its part. If starting young, kids were taught meditation, kids were taught breath work, kids were taught proper ways to outlet their anger. When I worked at the daycare, one thing that I recognized right away, because I've been around kids my whole life, is that not every kid needs to outlet their emotions the same way. And parents do a disservice to their kids by assuming that they're just like them. You have to watch what your kid is doing and what they need to do when they're angry. The kid who wants to harm something else, which I've seen firsthand what kids do when they're angry, many of them. And some of them that I've taken care of have had that urgency to harm something, to harm another life. And when I saw that, I taught that we don't do that. Instead, you do something safe with that energy. You know, you take a ball and you kick it against something safe. You use little bopper gloves and you hit them against something safe. You know, you give a kid a time and a place for them to outlet their energy, their anger, their emotions in a healthy way for them, so that they can grow up fulfilling who they are, because they're not all the same. Some kids need to be alone. Some kids need affection. Some kids need to outlet their energy. Some kids need to go be in nature. Everybody has a different need and desire, and we should instead be teaching them how to be full humans. And how to respect and honor that they're different. But also giving them the baseline, which is meditation, breath work. And also I've seen great results from introducing children to shamanic allies. And that is something that I did with many children that I've known, but essentially through guided meditation, introducing them to an animal that they related to, or an energy that they related to. And in hard family situations, what I did for this child in particular was I had her imagine that they were all different kinds of birds, and that she was the kind of bird she chose to be, and that no matter how different we all were as birds, we all flew together, united. Because I wanted her to know that no matter what she saw in this world between everybody, she knew that we were all united and connected and beside her. I saw that have amazing results. Surrounding her with rainbow light and having her surround herself with rainbow light, having her send energy to people via rainbow light. These were all things that were really helpful as well, because rainbow is the light reflected in the water. It is life, it is consciousness, it is the highest form of light. And no matter what your favorite color is, it's in there. You mix them all up. You get the darkness, you got all of it. Doesn't matter. Suitable for everybody. These are the things that were reiterated to me in the spring of 2020, which I posted on my social media about because I'm incredibly passionate about it anyway, because I've seen great results in it in my life and in the lives of those that I was able to work with around me. And also because it was reiterated to me by the Great Spirit who made contact with me in March, the very beginning of March of 2020. And I wrote about that as well and posted about it. And I wrote an article and sent it to my witchcraft teacher at the time. He's a wonderful teacher. But I'm also now realizing that maybe there needs to be people that have an addiction problem, a drug addiction problem, or maybe even a food addiction problem, but somebody who has an addiction problem that can attest to whether that helps them or not before we figure out how we can rehabilitate such a huge amount of people, because evidently it seems to be a huge pandemic. And it surprises me every time, because again, I don't understand it, and so I have a hard time understanding it. But it is an important conversation that we need to have. Awareness, consciousness, change, and how can we make it better? And again, school systems need reforming. Big time. And that's not a secret to anybody. So where can we start?